The year was 1991. Across two hemispheres, a similar disease spread like cancer. In Buenos Aires, shoppers sprinted down a grocery aisle, chased by clerks with a pricing gun, aimed at raising the price of milk before the customer could reach the carton. In Belgrade, a pensioner carried a bag with 500 billion dinar notes just to buy a single loaf of bread. He'd better spend as fast as possible. What was this crazy disease? The epidemic of the early 1990s was hyperinflation. It infected 5 countries in Latin America and 16 countries in the former Soviet bloc. This table summarizes the financial calamity. Note that hyperinflation means an inflation rate of more than 50% per month, not per year. Individual investors lost all their savings as their money melted faster than butter on fire. Were the Latin and Soviet hyperinflation similar? While their causes were worlds apart, the symptoms were identical: the total collapse of trust in their local currency. How did two similar but different disasters coincide in the early 1990s? Let's start with Latin America, where hyperinflation hits first. As seen here earlier, Latin America had a quite good 1970s, but a terrible 1980s, known as the lost decade. The fuse was set up by the US Fed in 1979, as Paul Volcker hiked interest rates aggressively. The fuse was lit in 1982, as Mexico announced it could no longer service its foreign debt. The Western banks that had lent to Mexico suspended all new loans not only to Mexico, but to all of Latin America. Governments from Argentina to Venezuela faced a brutal triple whammy. First, the service costs of their hundreds of billions of debt jumped in dollars. Second, their local currencies crashed hard, and these currency crises made the debt costs even more crushing in local currency. Third, Volcker's interest rate hikes caused a global recession. This depressed tax revenues in Latin America. How to pay for health and education? Governments had only one solution: their central bank printed unbacked money. Inflation picked up in Latin America after 1982. And then it exploded. Bolivia was the first country in Latin America where hyperinflation appeared. By 1985, the government printed money so fast that the country's largest import by weight was actually the physical banknotes printed in Germany and Britain. Inflation peaked at 120% per month, compounding to 12,000% per year. As described by Jeffrey Sachs, the human toll in Bolivia in 1985 was as bad as the one in Germany, 1923, or in Hungary, 1946. Bolivian workers would receive their paychecks and immediately run to the black market to trade pesos for US dollars. A 30-minute delay in line to buy food could mean losing 10% of your salary's purchasing power. As seen here earlier, several Latin American countries then defaulted on their foreign debt following Mexico in 1982. Inflation spread like wildfire as the IM-led strategy of muddling through took hold. The early 1990s saw peak hyperinflation in 5 countries, as seen here. Worst hit was Peru, with a monthly inflation rate of 397% in 1990. In 1989, the Latin debt problem was solved with Brady bonds. Lenders took a 35% loss, as the bank debt was converted into tradable bonds, collateralized by 30-year U.S. Treasuries. Latin American countries then implemented monetary reforms. In 1994, Brazil launched its Plano Real, which broke inertial inflation with a new currency pegged to the US dollar. This, combined with fiscal prudence, killed hyperinflation by 1996. But how about hyperinflation in the Soviet bloc? Was it different? While Latin America struggled with debt, Eastern Europe watched an entire economic system dissolve. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and the Soviet Union finally imploded in 1991. Next, command economies were replaced by market economies in the former Soviet bloc. And the country where this unraveling happened the fastest was Poland. In 1989, even before the Soviet collapse, Poland's communist economy was broken. Shelves were empty. The government, desperate to stock shelves, ended price controls. Inflation jumped and morphed into hyperinflation, soaring to 77% per month in 1990. Finance Minister Balcerowicz, advised by Jeffrey Sachs, opted for shock therapy. Stop money printing and let the currency float. Unemployment soared. But by 1992, Poland was the first post-communist country to return to growth, with lower inflation. But the most haunting story of the 1990s belongs to the remnants of Yugoslavia, Serbia and Montenegro. War in Bosnia and international sanctions created a perfect storm. The government of Slobodan Milosevic printed money to fund the war effort until the currency became worthless. Hyperinflation peaked in January 1994 at an incredible 313% per month. The central bank issued a 500 billion dinar note. It was the highest denomination in the world at the time, as described by Peter Bernholz. People survived by bartering eggs for gasoline and relying on Deutsche Marks hidden in mattresses. How does Yugoslavia rank in the global hyperinflation table? It is ranked third in world history. How did it end? The Yugoslavian hyperinflation died after a shock therapy, not unlike the Polish case. Transition to market economy, coupled by a new currency pegged to a hard currency and fiscal discipline, meaning no printing money to finance deficits. How bad is hyperinflation? It causes human distress and suffering in a very concrete way. Look at this table with data from the World Bank. In Latin America, the lost decade of the 1980s, coupled with hyperinflation, ravaged living standards. In Soviet bloc countries, the impact was even worse. In his definitive historical analysis of hyperinflation, Peter Bernholz compares almost all known cases of hyperinflation. He identifies that in both Latin America and the Soviet bloc, the point of no return occurred when government budget deficits were financed by creating money at a rate higher than 40% of expenditures. But the causes of hyperinflation were different. In Latin America, the crisis was institutional. The countries ran market economies where private citizens were allowed to own and run businesses, including industries, banks, stores, and farms. Hyperinflation was a byproduct of the 1980s foreign debt crisis. Killing hyperinflation was about regaining the public's trust in the central bank, with fiscal prudence. But in the former Soviet bloc, the crisis was much deeper. The countries ran command economies. There were no private businesses, and there was no concept of market prices. When the state stopped printing money, there was no private sector ready to take over. This is why hyperinflation led to a much deeper and longer-lasting depression than the Latin American crises of the same era. Does this matter to you? What can you do when inflation gets out of control and mutates into hyperinflation? Unfortunately, there's nowhere to hide except in other geographies. Locals who are unable to shift assets elsewhere are reduced to spending their banknotes as quickly as possible, trading these for real assets, or to trade them for harder currency. This is an old drama, first seen in France 1795. Financial history shows us that hyperinflation is not a relic of the past. Our verified sources are here. Write to us in the comments section if your interpretation is different, or if you'd like to suggest other sources. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more financial history from verified sources, subscribe to our channel and join our community of individual investors who strive to learn from the misfortunes of others to avoid similar fates.